If you're hearing this, stop moving. Don't look at the walls for too long, and for the love of God, don't trust the silence. The smell hits you first. A damp, musky stench reminiscent of old clothes left to rot in a flooded basement. A scent that seems to coat your lungs with mold. You are looking at footage recovered from a camcorder found encased inside a concrete pillar of a demolished office building in 1998. A physical impossibility that science still refuses to explain. What you are seeing isn't a set, and it isn't a digital fabrication. It is a place that exists in the tangential slips of our reality, a dimension of infinite, non-linear space known only in whispers as the Backrooms. The geometry here is wrong. Rooms loop back onto themselves. Corridors stretch into eternity without leading anywhere, and the fluorescent lights above buzz at a frequency that induces hemorrhages in the human brain. The man holding the camera is Elias Thorne, a structural engineer who vanished on a Tuesday afternoon while inspecting a routine basement renovation. He didn't fall down a well or get taken by a kidnapper. He simply took a step in the wrong direction and slipped through the cracks of the world. In the footage you are about to see, you will witness the slow, agonizing erosion of a human mind confronted with 600 million square miles of randomly segmented empty rooms. But the emptiness is a lie, a cruel trick to lower your guard before the true horror manifests. There are things living in the yellow wallpaper, entities that mimic human voices, shadows that move when you blink, and distorted anatomical nightmares that hunt not for hunger, but to silence the noise of your breathing. As we analyze the 6 hours of tape Elias left behind, ask yourself why the camera kept recording long after the battery should have died. Ask yourself why the architecture seems to be watching him. And most importantly, ask yourself if you've ever felt that sudden, unexplained drop in your stomach when you walk into a quiet room, because that's how close you are to falling in. This is not just a story of a missing person. It is proof that our reality is thin, fragile, and full of holes. Welcome to the documentation of File 88 Gamma. Welcome to the Backrooms. On September 14, 1996, the city of Camden, New Jersey experienced a minor blip in its local history, a disappearance so sudden and absolute that it baffled local law enforcement for decades. The subject was Elias Thorne, a 34-year-old structural engineer known for his meticulous nature and skepticism of the paranormal. Elias was contracted to inspect the foundation of the Holloway Commercial Center, a brutalist office complex built in the late 80s that had never managed to keep tenants for more than a few months. The building was plagued by complaints, odd acoustic anomalies, power surges that defied electrical logic, and a pervasive, unidentifiable smell of moist carpet that no amount of industrial cleaning could remove. Elias entered the sub-basement at 2:14 p.m. His colleague, waiting by the freight elevator, reported hearing a sound described as wet fabric tearing, followed by a sudden change in air pressure that popped his ears. When he turned around, Elias was gone. There were no screams, no footsteps, and no exits. The concrete floor was unbroken. Elias Thorne had effectively ceased to exist in our three-dimensional space. For 25 years, Elias was just another cold case, a tragic statistic of urban vanishings. That was until the demolition of the Holloway Center in 2021. As wrecking crews dismantled the primary load-bearing pillars of the sub-basement, the foreman discovered a Sony Handycam embedded inside the poured concrete of a wall. The concrete was dated to 1989, 7 years before Elias disappeared. The camera, however, was the model Elias had carried in 1996. The implications were physically impossible. For the camera to be there, it would have had to travel back in time or be placed there during the building's construction, creating a temporal paradox that terrified the investigators. The footage contained on the tape, miraculously preserved, reveals a harrowing journey into a liminal hellscape. It forces us to confront the concept of no clipping, a term borrowed from video game terminology, where a player glitches through physical barriers. But this isn't a game. The Backrooms, as internet folklore would later name it, appears to be a chaotic, infinite dimension of randomly generated office spaces that exists alongside our own. It is a place of mono-yellow madness, where the laws of physics are suggestions, and the only constant is the hum of lights and the threat of the unknown. In this analysis, we will break down the footage chapter by chapter. We will witness Elias's initial confusion turn to dread, his rational mind attempting to map the unmappable, and his eventual descent into primal terror as he realizes he is not the only thing wandering the infinite complex. We will explore the historical context of the site, the disturbing testimonies of those who worked in the Holloway Center, and the psychological impact of Level 0. Be warned. The images you are about to visualize are distressing. They trigger a primal, instinctual fear buried deep in the human psyche, the fear of a place that looks familiar but feels profoundly, fatally wrong. The Holloway Commercial Center was never a normal building. From its inception in 1982, it was marred by construction accidents and architectural oddities that unsettled the contractors. The blueprints themselves contained errors. Rooms labeled with no doors, corridors that dead-ended into load-bearing walls, and stairwells that descended into the earth deeper than the foundation allowed. The site became a local legend in Camden, a sick building where businesses went to die. Former employees reported a phenomenon they called the shift. They described moments where the ambient noise of the office, phones ringing, typing, chatter, would suddenly cut out, replaced by a deafening silence and the smell of ozone. These episodes lasted only seconds, but they left the workers with nosebleeds and a sense of profound vertigo. Elias Thorne was hired specifically to investigate these structural anomalies. He was a man of science, a pragmatist who believed every sound had a source, and every shadow was just a trick of the light. His audio logs leading up to the inspection reveal a man frustrated by what he called superstitious nonsense from the building managers. He speaks into his recorder with a tone of arrogant confidence, dismissing the janitor's warnings to never touch the yellow walls. We see footage of Elias prepping his gear, a flashlight, a measuring tape, a notebook, and his Sony Handycam. He is thorough, professional, and completely unaware that he is preparing for his own funeral. The chapter explores the isolated nature of the sub-basement. It was a storage area that tenants refused to use. Boxes went missing. Shadows were reported to detach from their casters. The community around the Holloway Center whispered that the building was built on thin ice, not over water but over reality itself. We introduce Sarah, Elias's sister, in a present-day interview. She describes Elias as grounded, the type of man who could fix anything. She recalls the night before he vanished. He called her complaining about a headache and a buzzing sound he couldn't get out of his ears, a prescient symptom of the frequency he was about to enter. The atmosphere of this chapter is one of looming dread. We know the destination, but watching Elias walk confidently toward the elevator, joking with the security guard, creates a painful, dramatic irony. The mundane nature of the setting, beige tiles, flickering lights, the banality of a 90s office, is weaponized. The horror here isn't a monster. It's the anticipation of the fall. The chapter ends with the last known footage of Elias in the real world. A grainy shot of the elevator doors closing, his reflection in the polished metal looking back at us. A ghost before he was even dead. The transition is instantaneous. 1 second, Elias is walking across the gray concrete of the sub-basement. The next, the camera jerks violently downward as if he missed a step. When the lens refocuses, the world has changed. The gray concrete is gone. The industrial pipes are gone. Elias is lying on a damp, mustard-colored carpet. The camera pans up, revealing the nightmare, an endless, segmented room covered in peeling, mono-yellow wallpaper. The ceiling is low, composed of acoustic tiles stained with water damage, and the lighting is harsh, buzzing fluorescence. This is the moment of discovery, the no-clip. Elias's reaction is not immediate scream-inducing terror, but profound confusion. He stands up, brushing the dampness from his jeans. "Hello?" he calls out. His voice doesn't echo. The room absorbs the sound, deadening it instantly. He assumes it's a prank, an elaborate set built by the construction crew. He laughs nervously, panning the camera around. "Very funny, guys. Where's the door?" But as he walks, the reality sets in. There are no doors. There are no windows. There is only the opening to the next room, and the next, and the next. All identical, all yellow, all smelling of moist rot. The horror manifests in the details. Elias brings the camera close to the wall. The pattern on the wallpaper isn't repeating correctly. It overlaps, stretches, and glitches like a corrupted texture file. He checks his compass, the needle is spinning wildly. He checks his watch, the second hand is moving backward. The realization hits the viewer before it hits Elias. He is outside of known space. We hear his breathing accelerate. He starts to run, the camera shaking wildly. He runs through 10, 20, 50 rooms, turning corners at random, desperate to find a stairwell or an elevator. But the layout defies logic. He turns right 3 times and ends up in a new room instead of back where he started. This chapter captures the onset of claustrophobia in an infinite space. It establishes the level 0 environment, the maddening sameness, the sensory deprivation disguised as sensory overload. We see Elias try to mark his path by scratching the wall with his keys, only to turn around minutes later and find the scratch gone, the room reset. The environment is hostile not because it attacks, but because it refuses to change. The chapter concludes with Elias collapsing against a wall, the bravado gone, replaced by the trembling realization that he has walked for hours and hasn't moved an inch. Elias, attempting to regain control through rationality, begins a systematic investigation of his prison. He adopts the persona of the engineer again, talking to the camera as a flight recorder. Subject is trapped in some kind of labyrinthine structure, he whispers. He attempts to map the area, counting his steps. He deduces that the total square footage he has traversed exceeds the physical footprint of the entire Holloway Center, confirming the impossibility of his location. The terror in this chapter comes from the silence and the isolation. Elias begins to document the hum, the constant droning buzz of the fluorescent lights. He notes that the pitch changes slightly in different rooms, sounding almost like a choir of suppressed screams in certain corridors. He discovers that the carpet is saturated with a fluid that isn't water. It's viscous and smells of almond water, a detail that deepens the lore. He tries to break through the ceiling tiles, standing on a chair he inexplicably finds in an empty room. Above the tiles is not ductwork or the floor above, but just more void. A gray, foggy nothingness that hurts his eyes to look at. Paranoia sets in. Elias captures something on the tape that he misses in the moment, a fleeting shadow in a doorway 3 rooms down. The audience sees it, a tall, emaciated figure that peeks out and retracts instantly. Elias speaks of the feeling of scopesthesia, the psychic sensation of being stared at. He starts shouting at the empty rooms, demanding the observers show themselves. He finds an object on the floor, a single leather shoe from the 1970s. It's covered in mold. This is the first concrete proof that others have been here before him. He picks it up, turning it over, his hands shaking. Inside, scrawled in ink, is a message. Don't stop moving. The chapter builds tension through these small discoveries. The environment is passive-aggressive. The lights flicker in Morse code patterns that spell out nonsense words. The walls seem to breathe when he isn't looking directly at them. Elias's scientific worldview is crumbling. He can't calculate the load-bearing capacity of a wall that shifts location. He is a rat in a maze that changes its layout to keep him lost. The chapter ends with Elias sleeping, the camera left running. In the grainy darkness, we hear footsteps, wet, slapping footsteps, circling him, getting closer, but never entering the frame. Elias wakes up screaming. The layout has changed while he slept. The yellow rooms have transitioned into what appears to be a maintenance tunnel. This is the transition to level 1. The air is filled with fog and the smell of gasoline. The lights are no longer the buzzing fluorescence but flickering industrial bulbs that leave large patches of darkness. The twist is the sudden verticality. He is no longer on a flat plane. There are stairs, ramps, and elevators, but none of them work. He finds a room that looks like a break room, complete with a vending machine. He rushes to it, desperate for food, but the machine is filled with impossible items, cans labeled liquid pain, bottles of black fluid, and objects that look like human organs. He smashes the glass and drinks a bottle of clear water only to vomit it up immediately. It tastes like static feels. This scene violently disproves the theory that this is a government experiment or a simulation. The details are too alien, too nightmarish. The supernatural activity escalates. Elias hears mechanical grinding noises like massive gears turning deep within the walls. He finds graffiti spray-painted on a concrete wall. They hear you. He encounters a glitch, a section of the hallway where the textures haven't loaded, appearing as a black void. He throws his flashlight into it and it disappears forever. But the true horror is the discovery of a colony. He finds a makeshift campsite made of torn carpet and broken furniture. It's abandoned, but recent. There is a fire pit with cold ashes. He finds a journal left behind by a previous wanderer named Catra. The journal describes the entities, the hounds, the smilers, the skin stealers. It details the rules of survival. Elias reads it to the camera, his voice breaking. He realizes that the people he thought he heard earlier were mimics trying to lure him. The twist deepens when he realizes the journal is dated 1982, 14 years before he arrived. Time does not flow linearly here. He might have been here for days or minutes. The chapter ends with the lights cutting out completely. In the pitch black, two glowing white eyes appear in the distance. A smile, far too wide for a human face, manifests in the dark. The chase begins. The narrative accelerates into pure survival horror. Elias is running through the concrete corridors of Level 1, pursued by the entity known as a smiler. The camera captures glimpses of the creature, a floating, glowing face in the dark, moving with impossible speed. Elias dives into a ventilation duct, crawling on his stomach. The sound design here is suffocating. The metallic clanging of the duct, his sobbing breath, and the scratching of the entity trying to squeeze in after him. He falls out of the duct into a new area, Level 2, the pipe dreams. It is a claustrophobic nightmare of steaming pipes, narrow tunnels, and intense heat. The walls are lined with machinery that serves no purpose. The pressure is immense. Elias is physically deteriorating, his skin is pale, his eyes sunken. He speaks to the camera, but he is no longer talking to us or to his family. He is talking to the Backrooms itself, begging it to let him go. He encounters a Wretch, a human-like figure that has been corrupted by the Backrooms, turning into a mindless zombie-like creature. It stands at the end of a long tunnel, weeping. Elias tries to sneak past it, but the floor creaks. The Wretch screams, a sound like metal on glass, and charges. Elias fights it off with a length of pipe, bashing the creature's skull. The violence is visceral and desperate. When the creature falls, Elias sees its face. It wears the tattered remains of a security guard uniform from the Holloway Center. It is someone he knew. This revelation shatters him. He realizes that death is not the end here. If you die, you become part of the ecosystem. He finds a room filled with file cabinets. Inside are files on thousands of people. People who haven't disappeared yet. People from the future. He finds his own file. It contains photos of his death. The temporal paradox creates a loop of despair. He is trapped in a deterministic nightmare. He realizes the investigation is pointless. The Backrooms doesn't follow rules that can be learned. It evolves to maximize suffering. The breaking point isn't a physical confrontation, but a psychological collapse. Elias has reached a zone of Level 2 where the heat is unbearable. He is dehydrated, hallucinating. He starts seeing his sister, Sarah, standing at the end of corridors. She beckons him, telling him the exit is just ahead. He follows her, stumbling, crying tears of relief. But every time he gets close, she dissolves into a pile of mold or turns into a wall. He corners one of these apparitions. "Sarah, please, I'm so tired," he begs. The apparition turns. It has no face, just smooth skin. It emits a high-pitched screech that distorts the audio recording. Elias smashes the camera against the wall in a fit of rage, cracking the lens. The footage from this point on is fractured, a visual representation of his fractured mind. He discovers a window. It shows the outside world, a street in Camden, rain falling, Cars driving. It looks real. He smashes the glass with his pipe, desperate to jump through. But behind the glass isn't the street. It's just more yellow wallpaper. The outside was a projected image, a cruel taunt. This breaks him completely. He huddles in the corner, rocking back and forth. He starts reciting nursery rhymes, then mathematical formulas, trying to anchor himself to a logic that no longer applies. The tension peaks when he hears a voice, a real voice, not a mimic. It's a radio signal coming from his walkie-talkie, which hasn't worked since he arrived. A distorted voice says, "Elias, if you can hear this, find the red door. You are in the threshold." It is a voice from the MEG, Major Explorer Group, a faction of wanderers. It offers a sliver of hope, a final objective. He has to run through the hottest, most dangerous part of the pipe tunnels to reach a rumored exit. He stands up, wraps his bleeding hands in torn cloth, and picks up the camera. "One last time," he whispers. Elias is running. The backrooms seem to be reacting to his attempt to leave. The walls are closing in, the pipes are bursting, spraying scalding steam. He is being hunted by a horde of entities, smilers, hounds, and things that defy description. The camera captures the chaos, a blur of motion, screams, and the relentless yellow and gray geometry. He spots the red door in the distance. It stands alone in the middle of a massive, cavernous hall of pipes. Between him and the door is a chasm, a drop into an infinite black void. There is a narrow beam connecting his platform to the door. He steps onto the beam. The entities stop at the edge, watching. They know something he doesn't. As he crosses, the beam starts to tilt. The physics are glitching. He reaches the door. The handle is hot to the touch. He turns it. The door opens. Inside is not an exit, but a blinding white light. He steps through, pulling the camera with him. The audio cuts to a high-pitched ringing. The visual shifts to a montage of surreal imagery, giant floating pyramids, an ocean of almond water, a sky made of static. He has not escaped. He has gone deeper, or perhaps he is being unmade. The climax is a sensory assault. Elias screams as his body begins to stretch and distort, the no-clipping effect tearing him apart at a molecular level. He tries to throw the camera back through the door, back to safety. "Tell them," he screams. "Tell them to stay away." The camera flies through the air, tumbling. It hits the ground. The lens is pointed back at Elias. We see him being pulled into the white void, his body unraveling like a spool of thread. The red door slams shut. The tape ends with 30 minutes of darkness. The audio records only the settling of concrete, the sound of the camera being encased in the pillar during the construction of the building in the past. The time loop is closed. Elias's camera was sent back to 1989, waiting 32 years to be found. We return to the present. Sarah, Elias's sister, is an old woman now. She holds the digital copy of the footage. She refuses to watch the end. "He's still there," she says quietly. "Every time a light buzzes, I think he's trying to talk to me." The documentary narrator explains the aftermath. The footage was leaked to the internet, spawning the Backrooms mythos. Millions of people claim to dream of the yellow rooms. Urban explorers break into abandoned buildings looking for no-clip zones. The resolution is ambiguous and terrifying. The Holloway Center is gone, replaced by a park. But the grass in the center of the park is always dead. Animals refuse to walk there. And if you put your ear to the ground on a quiet night, you can hear a faint mechanical hum.